Happy Sunday, Broncos fans, and welcome into another Broncos mailbag. You guys keep asking questions, so we're just going to keep on answering them. I'm your host, Sam Brown, as always, and we've got tons of different questions for you today, so let's go ahead and jump on in. First question coming in from Garrett Young using hashtag Broncos. Said, if you were the GM, do you restructure Von Miller and Kareem Jackson, and what do the contracts look like hypothetically? I'll start with Von Miller here because I think that's more of a chance that he is brought back to Denver than Kareem Jackson. I think you're looking at 2 years, $21 million, around that ballpark. He's supposed to make about $22 million off his club option next year, $17.5 million cap hit for Denver. So I think if you take that money and you kind of divide it into 2 years, readdress this contract situation after his age 33 season, I think that's the right move for Denver. With Kareem Jackson, and I've talked about it on this show, it's kind of harder to predict, and I think it's more likely that the Broncos don't bring him back because his club option is $10 million. But the problem is, as you see the numbers on screen, he's been a very solid safety in Denver, and I find it hard to believe he'll get any less than $7-8 million a year, which makes it very hard for Denver to kind of restructure that money. And so in that sense, I think that because of the money that you're committing to Justin Simmons and the safety position as a whole, if you draft a safety maybe, it's going to make it hard for Kareem Jackson to come back. I'm a big fan of K-Jack, but at this point, I think he's going to get more money elsewhere potentially, and it's going to be harder for Denver to restructure that money. But here's the pinned comment down below on this mailbag video. You can answer for me. Maybe you disagree with me. If you had to pick one, though, who would you keep? You can type Von Miller, VM, or you can type KJ for Kareem Jackson. I'd probably type VM right now for Von Miller just because of the veteran presence he brings, face of the franchise, face of the defense for the last 5 years or so, and he's been a valuable mentor to Bradley Chubb, maybe mentor Malik Reed as well. But let me know in the comments section. VM for Von Miller, KJ for Kareem Jackson. All right, next question coming in from Thorix Gaming. Would it be smart not to pick up K-Jack's option and save $10 million cap space and then draft a safety? So I talked about Kareem Jackson and his contract situation, obviously just right before this. So I'll kind of focus a little bit more on the safety side of things, or draft side of things when it comes to a safety, because I think there's some solid prospects on day 2 that Denver could target either in the second or third round. Trevon Merrick is the mostly consensus top safety in this class. I've seen him go as high as the teens. I've seen him mid-round 2 as well, so maybe won't be available for Denver in the second round. Javon Holland opted out of the 2020 season, still trying to figure out whether his best position would be in the nickel or in a safety role coming out of Oregon. Hamza Nasir-Dean is a guy that I really like as a strong safety role for Denver alongside Justin Simmons. Very athletic, flies to the ball, good in run stoppage, and could be solid as well in coverage against tight ends. Andre Cisco, Tom Downey likes to call him the boomer bust safety prospect because he's got some boom plays, 13 interceptions over his career at Syracuse. Problem is he's got a bunch of bust plays as well, and he's coming off a torn ACL. And then Richie Grant is a guy that I've seen as high as the second highest safety on the board. I'm not quite as sure just because he can fit a couple different roles, but I'm not sure if there's one role where he'd be best suited. He's a very athletic player and could wind up going in the second round as well. But those are 5 names to kind of keep in mind as draft season approaches. All right, Adam Souza says, hashtag Broncos, what would be too much to give the Texans in return for Deshaun Watson? I think their reported asking price, which was 3 first-round picks and 2 defensive starters. So I want you to work with me here because I'm going to propose 2 different trade scenarios that I would do if I was Denver. If you go draft heavy, I don't think you give up any more than 3 first-round picks. I think at that point you're mortgaging too much of your future. 4 years worth of first-round picks. You look down the line, this whole Deshaun Watson thing potentially doesn't work out. All of a sudden, you are in a tough spot, a Houston Texans spot, if you will, where you're short on draft capital, and you're in a tough spot because you can't get the top player that you need to kind of rebuild and reload. And if it's a player-heavy draft or a player-heavy trade package, I wouldn't do any more than 2 starters. I think at that point, again, if you're losing 2-3 starters on your defense or on your defense, you get those first-round picks and back, and you can use them on the defensive side of the ball, but they're not sure things. They're not as sure things as a young defensive starter, an A.J. Johnson, not an A.J. Johnson, but like a Josie Jewell, if you will, or a Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb, if you give up more than 2 of those, at that point, you're really starting to mortgage the quality on that side of the ball. So in that reality, in that perspective, I would give up either 3 first-round picks and a defensive starter, or 2 first-round picks and 2 defensive starters, maybe throw in an extra day 2 pick, whatever it takes to sweeten the deal there. But I'm not giving them 3 firsts and 2 defensive starters. Now, if the Broncos make a move for Deshaun Watson, as we've said time and time again, you better bet your ass we're going to be coming around here and making a video for you guys. So be sure to keep up with the Broncos Breakdown. If you like more content like this, we might be the perfect channel for you. Approaching 2,000 subscribers. You see that updated sub count on the graphic on the screen for you. Be sure to subscribe. YouTube.com/Broncos TV, or you hit that big red button right below this video. I'm trying to keep this Broncos channel going like crazy, but we need your help to do it, so be sure to subscribe. All right, Flaming Viper V12 is next on this mailbag video. #Broncos, what would be the best contract to bring Lavonte David into Denver? For starters, I think it's going to be a lot, and I'm not sure Denver's going to be able to sign Lavonte David because I think he's going to go for 2-3 years, at least $12 million per year, if not more than that. This is a guy obviously coming off a Super Bowl season with the Buccaneers, shined alongside Devin White in that linebacker unit. And I'm a little bit concerned about the fact he's, going to turn 33, or he just turned 33, will be 34 during the 2021 season. And I think maybe playing alongside Devin White put him in more situations to make plays. I'm not as 100%. I do like the player, don't get me wrong. But I'm not 100% the stats match the type of player that he may be at 33 years old. Still a solid player. I'm just not sure I'd be willing to pay the maybe even $14 million to bring him into Denver when you have a Justin Simmons to bring around. You still have to decide on Von Miller, Phillip Lindsay, Tim Patrick. That's a lot of money that you still have to sort out for Denver. But I'll ask you right now, should the Broncos sign Lavonte David? You can type your simple Y for yes, or you can type your N for no. If you type your N for no, maybe be an overachiever. If you have a name in mind, whether it's a Micah Parsons or another linebacker in the draft, be sure to let me know in the comments section. Mark is up next here on our Denver Broncos mailbag. Said, should the Broncos get another running back if Phillip Lindsay leaves? I've talked about the possibility of Phillip Lindsay leaving the Broncos this offseason and what that can mean. So instead, we're going to focus on if he leaves, who are some names he could sign. In terms of day 2 running back prospects in the draft, I've talked about a few of these already. Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, the duo out of UNC. Would be okay with either one of those if it's at the right spot. Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis, really an all-purpose back. And then I'll introduce to you 2 names that we haven't talked about. Trey Sermon out of Ohio State and Ramondre Stevenson out of Oklahoma. Had a chance to really look at both and a lot during my time at my alma mater at the University of Oklahoma. Sermon obviously transferred to Ohio State, broke out late in the season before suffering that injury in the national championship. And Ramondre Stevenson is a guy I like as more of a 4th round, potentially 4th or 5th round pick. He's more elusive than you'd think at 240 pounds, but he can also lower the shoulder and deliver some boom. So I like him as well. In terms of free agents, I want you to work with me here, but these are 4 names that I propose. First, 2 veterans, Mark Ingram, Todd Gurley. I like Ingram more because he'd be cheaper, and I think he's a better veteran presence, a better leader in the locker room, but Gurley could fill that role as well. James White, if you want a little bit more of the pass-catching ability we saw from Lindsay early on, although only 7 receptions last season. And then Gus Edwards from that Baltimore Ravens backfield. That Baltimore Ravens backfield was pretty damn good this last year, and Gus Edwards had some bright moments as well. Whenever Mark Ingram was injured, J.K. Dobbins still coming along, showed some flashes as well for Denver. Now I'll ask you this. If Phillip Lindsay leaves, hypothetically, would you rather sign or draft a running back? You can type S for sign, or you can type D for draft. I'm a big fan of drafting those day 2, day 3 running backs, seeing if you can find a boom, like a kind of sleeper boom prospect. We tried with Royce Freeman. I'm not sure that's kind of going to work out, but maybe you'd rather sign a free agent. Let me know in the comments section. All right, next question in from Boss Stank Productions. It's a nice name, Boss Stank, I'll give you that. Let's say Penei Sewell falls to number 9. Should we take him? For starters, I seriously doubt he drops 9. I think he's the best tackle in this class, and I'd be shocked if he drops past the Bengals at 5, to be honest. But if you look at the depth chart right now, hypothetically, potentially, yes. And I'll kind of break that down. You'd want him either at left tackle, right tackle, but it's kind of figuring out what his better fit would be. He could start at left tackle day 1. And at that point, you ask yourself the question, maybe move Garrett Bowles to his original position at right tackle. What he played in college as well might be an option. for Denver, I mean, you're not going to put him on the interior, obviously, so it's either left tackle or right tackle. I think if he's there, obviously, you draft him because he'd probably be better than any of the other prospects available. Even a Surtain, a Farley, I would take him. But it's going to be hard to kind of find his fit. And at that point, you're deciding whether the need really, overvalues the player. I think, the need of a cornerback or a linebacker may be greater than to draft a player like Sewell. But at the same time, when you have a prospect like him, who some people call a generational type of prospect at the tackle spot, it's something that, should give George Paton a lot of thought going into number 9. Last question here on our Broncos mailbag. Trevor Neeson's got the last word. Hashtag Broncos, what are your ideal positions to draft in the first 3 rounds? We talked about too many a time, so I'll kind of breeze past those. Cornerback and linebacker, I think you have to address at some point in the first 3 rounds, both of them. I think you draft a cornerback and you draft a linebacker. In terms of that third pick, I'd be okay with a running back, an offensive lineman to provide some more depth, or even a safety. At that point, it's really who you value, who is there, and who George Paton has on his big board. I think no matter what, though, you have to draft a cornerback or a linebacker in the first 3 rounds, at least one of them in round 1. Unless hypothetically a Penei Sewell comes down and we decide, hey, we want to overvalue, get the best player available, which in that case would be Penei Sewell. But that would be my top 3 to 5, we'll call it, but you kind of understand what I'm saying. I think that third pick, if you do one of the 3, running back, offensive lineman, safety, you're in a good spot. And it really depends on what their needs are going to look like come draft time. But I'll ask you this question to round out today's mailbag. Name a position you want the Broncos to draft, but the only thing is, you can't say cornerback. Everyone knows the Broncos need cornerback help. In all likelihood, they'll address that in the draft. So I want you to think outside the box, use your brain a little bit, turn the gears a little, and name a position for me that you think the Broncos need to draft this April. All right, that's going to do it for our Denver Broncos mailbag. If you made it to the end of the video, you liked the video, maybe you want more videos, be sure to subscribe to the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. The bosses here at Chat Sports are being awesome, letting me come in and film a bunch of different videos with y'all, and I want to keep it going. The more subscribers we get, the more videos you get. So be sure to subscribe, youtube.com/BroncosTV, or hit the big red button right below this video.